thank you, everyone. And then tonight we have Matthew, so no strangers to us. So Matthew would do a introduction for music pieces tonight, where he will analyze and interpret the piece for us, and also we'll be learning. And also, it would be a more like casual context, and then we can just ask questions if we have any, or just poke him, ask him to tell us anything. So the floor is yours, Matthew. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I heard what you were saying up until you said up until you called my name. Then I walked over. So anyway, yeah. So maybe I'll start by just saying what I have prepared and what I haven't, because I think what I haven't prepared is just as important as what I have prepared. So I promised Tracy and Amy that I would do this, just so it would give me a little bit of impetus to practice. As you can probably imagine, practicing is not something that we do on a regular basis unless there's some pressure. But there is one piece that I've been kind of thinking of learning for about the past 10 years, and never got around to it. So I thought, well, let's do that. So that was kind of one thing. And then as I was also preparing this, yeah, and then I happen to have one student who's very bright. He's doing his level 10 piano, and that is a little bit beyond my ability to sight read. And as I heard once, the only way you can really teach a piece is by playing it. And the guy who said this is the dean of the Glenn Gould School. So I feel if he says that, then it must be true. So there I went and I learned his pieces, and I thought I would share that with you tonight. So in total, I think there's about 20 to 25 minutes of music, somewhere around that. I could just go ahead and play all of them, but that would be kind of boring. So as I was playing, or as I was practicing, by the way, I spent about 3 to 4 hours practicing 4 times a week for the last 3 or 4 weeks for this. So maybe it's not so much of bragging as it is to say, like, it is possible to do that, and it's actually possible for it to be fun to practice for 3 to 4 hours, for 4 times a week or something. So that's right. So as I was practicing, I was thinking, well, what does it mean to experience a piece? I mean, my first question was, what does it mean to interpret a piece? But then I thought, well, what does it mean to experience a piece, both from the perspective of a performer and as a listener? And then that led me to another question, which is, well, you have been calling these experiential nights, and this is my first experiential night, so I have no idea what that means. And so I thought, maybe we'll start off with a conversation about this whole idea of experiences and what it means to have experiences, what we hope to gain, what it means to gain from experiences, and all of that. So in the blurb I ended up writing, that's kind of what I mean by a springboard for more general issues around performance and perception. I guess I'm looking around, and you're all, performing members of TCO, and some of you have at times been unable to play, so you've sat and listened. So you're all listening members of TCO as well. So that's kind of my question. Like, what does it mean to perform a piece, and what does it mean to listen to a piece? I have that's what I have prepared. What I haven't prepared is how we go about doing this. I don't have a list of, I have one question, which is the one that I just talked about, but I don't have a list of questions for us to discuss. I don't have a set of talking points. I can talk about the pieces from a purely theoretical angle. I can talk about them from a slightly more musicological one. I can tell stories and pull stuff out of a hat, which is sometimes what I do when I teach. Where we go with this material is entirely up to you. And if there's awkward silence, then I'll just play the pieces, and 25 minutes later, I go get my dumplings. All right.
We can resume the dumpling in the near future, hopefully. But
yes,
you made a good point. After this, some part of me, I always feel for the listener or audience, they remember us by the feelings we gave them, not always the technicality. That makes a difference too, of course. But I think what resonates with people, with listener, is the feeling they receive from our music. That's what I feel usually.
It's true.
I don't know how you feel about it.
It's absolutely true. I remember, I think this was our second year in Taiwan, and we were doing the Master of Pen and Sword, which was the piece that we left off with when COVID hit. And there was this passage where the Erhu and Zhonghu go, and it's really difficult and it's really fast. And Dr. Chen said, "This is all effect. It's wind blowing over the grave." And so you're absolutely right, Felix. Now, of course, as you'll hear in what I'm going to present, the technique matters a whole lot too. There were entire takes that I just kind of discarded because there's a really obvious wrong note, and well, maybe I should have left them in, and then maybe we can discuss what that means for an experience. So these are relatively live recordings. I made some of the recordings last Friday, and I made the rest today. Mostly because the Wi-Fi in my piano room is garbage, and it's probably better than hearing me plunk this stuff out on my keyboard. So I guess where do we begin with this? Maybe let's just let's make use of the chat bar. I see a whole bunch of people here who are very shy. So maybe let's have everybody type in, your thought when you think of, I guess, experiential night. And maybe if you're on the working team, don't answer quite yet.
Need a moment to think about this one.
Yeah. So it can be as general as what you think about experiential night in general, or what you're hoping that to get by the time we finish tonight, like what you're hoping to get from me. So, okay, we have lots of keywords here. I think we started with learning. Let's see. Felix says staying active, continue experience the music world. See, if this were really academic, I would tell you not to define a word by using the same word.
I don't have a better word. I was thinking like that doesn't mean a lot, but
yeah. Yeah, and then we have something about kind of differences, different styles of music. Tracy said new or different perspectives. I think Felix later said something different than kind of the
usual.
The usual routine of rehearsals.
Very different, actually, based on our long history of TCO. Quarter century history of TCO. This year is very, very different.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So why don't we? Here's where I get to pick on people. Nope, got one more. I encourage others. Yeah, okay. All right. Let's see, who shall we pick on? So there is an ulterior motive for this, because now that you've all said something, I assume you have thoughts on this. Let's see. Okay, well, let's see. How about Calvin Chan? I think you mentioned communicate music issues, which I don't think other people have mentioned quite so much. So can you expand a little bit on that?
Yes, actually, I put down two questions. One, the word is communicate. The other one is engage. Engage is somehow get involved. Now, first of all, in front of me, I see 7 people, but there are 19 of us sign in. The other 12 of them, I do not see them. They want to engage themselves in this process. If you don't see each other, how you get engaged? Music is, you don't want to share. You just don't want to hide in the dark and then just listen. And just like in the classroom, nobody asks questions, people just put down their head. It is a process of sharing. Then I have a hard time communicate with somebody else if I don't see their face. But this is how I see it. Okay, other people may have different idea.
Yeah, good. Okay. So on as you say, Calvin, on our particular Zoom call, we have some people who show their faces and some people who don't. Again, to reference my Thursday morning theory tutorial, the percentage of people showing their faces is 0. My guess is everybody has just woken up with a morning hair, and nobody wants to show that. So my bigger question then, or my follow-up question, Calvin, then, or maybe Calvin, if you're tired of answering, then pick on somebody else. What might that translate to, say, in a concert? You know, tonight you're hearing me play. How would that translate when, say, you're the one on stage?
If I'm playing,
yeah,
I want to make sure that the audience or whoever want to listen to me you pay attention. I do not want, okay, for example, if I'm playing a music, somebody on the background are practicing, even though they mute themselves, that I don't think that it is communicating. If they are not paying much attention, doesn't matter how I do it or whether I do it well or not well, they don't care. They only care about themselves. The next time when they perform, they want to do a good job. So they practice just right before their turn in performing. Like in this, there's no sharing. Actually, I will consider that a lack of respect. If you want people to listen to you, and you have to listen to somebody else too. It's just a process.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Thank you, Kevin. Oh, actually, adding to that, because Matthew, your question, we actually have some feedback or criticism for our orchestra from outside world. That we are also serious. Look like we are at a funeral because it's performing art. So it's good that you mentioned the performance part of the art of music.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the two things that I got from Calvin, your sharing, was one, that idea of back and forth, this two-way communication, and also this idea of the visual aspect. I mean, that was more when you talked about whether you can see people or not. But I think that maybe let's dive into this two-way aspect a little more, as I think very often we as performers come with one mindset. We're going to play our music, and then audiences maybe come with another mindset. We're going to sit here and listen. And I want to interrogate that a little bit, because what I'm curious in, is there more bleed in? Is there more kind of an exchange than we might think? You know, the most obvious one, of course, is if you're at a concert, you know, you finish playing and you hear like that's pretty depressing. Right? Whereas, you know, if you're at a concert and then you finish giving a performance and there's huge applause, then you feel that there is some sort of response. But I wonder if there is you know, more to this kind of communication, both on the part of the performer and on the part of the listener. Doubly so, I guess, since we're doing recordings now. So I'm both the performer and the listener tonight, which is kind of strange. So maybe let's dive into some music. I'll play. So I have 3 pieces prepared from different styles. So I have the I have the C major Prelude and Fugue from Bach's first well-tempered Clavier. It is so this is one of the pieces. Well, so this is actually one piece that I did for my ARCT. I guess it was 10 years ago, and then now one of my students is learning it, so I picked it back up. So there's that. There's the I prepared about half of a Beethoven sonata, and it's literally half because I learned the first movement, I learned the second movement, and I'm through about the first page and a half of the third movement. So I actually just stopped. So partially, I really wanted to show a work in progress. So I do stop at the end of a phrase, and it will sound awkward. The Beethoven sonata is a late work, so there's all sorts of things around how do we interpret that, and then there's finally a Chopin Nocturne, which is another piece that I have a student playing. Why don't I start with the Nocturne, and maybe as we're listening, why don't we kind of try to be self-aware listeners? You know, at the end of, and awareness can mean almost anything. You can be aware of how you feel, and if you type in "I was bored" afterwards, that is entirely okay. I promise I will not be offended, or you know, if I am, I won't show it. You know, or it could be you know, if you know the piece, you know, it could be something like, I've heard it differently before, right? So something a little more cerebral, you know, or it can be almost anything else, right? If you happen to pay attention to the cars passing by my bay window as I'm playing, you know, just make a note of that. Okay, so there's no real right answer here, but I just kind of like to see, as an experiment, what we pay attention to and what we get out of a performance. All right. Does anyone have any questions so far? Great. I must either be doing a great job or a terrible job. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to pull this up, and then I will. Let's see, and then I'll share my screen. Okay, share sound, optimize for video clip. Okay. So let's see. So I'll play a little bit just to make sure the audio is working. So if I could get just a little bit of feedback, that'd be good. So does everyone kind of hear something? The sound's okay.
The sound's okay.
Sounds okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, here we go. Piece number 1, Chopin Nocturne. Okay, let's see, stop share here. There's a big gray rectangle in the video. Oh, interesting. I wonder if that's me trying to adjust the volume. Okay, so let's hear some responses, and maybe let's try to aim beyond, good job or whatever, or practice more. Like let's try to aim beyond binaries. If there are particular questions, like why did you decide to do this, or stuff like that, that would be good. But let's have everybody say something into the chat at this point. Okay, good. So Kimberly, to answer your question, why this piece? Because one of my students was learning it. There's no good reason around that. Why he picked that piece, I have no idea either. So yeah, actually, so sometimes I find, and again, this is maybe a segue into programming, or not so much orchestra or concert programming, but just kind of programming what we play, or so sometimes I find that external reasons are quite nice, because then you don't get a choice, right? I find that sometimes when we pick, when it's up to us to pick pieces, we pick all the pieces we like, and they tend to be very limited sample. So you join an orchestra, somebody picks your pieces for you. You don't really get a choice. I mean, you can give some feedback, right? But ultimately the choice is somebody else's, right? Yeah. See, it segues like this that I'm really hoping to get to tonight.
I do have a question, actually. Matthew.
Yeah.
You talked about the music part. So sometimes we use audio visual, like PowerPoint, video, or other things that move around. Do you think that takes away from the music, or enrich the? What's your view on this one? Like,
I don't know. And partially, like there are. I don't really plan to give answers today.
Okay.
I hate answers, because the answers are the cessation of thinking, which is something that Wilfred might say. But it's a good question that you asked, Felix, because I had thought of, like, so I recorded this last week, and then I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I recorded this at night, right? Because it's a nocturne, and then I had like a spotlight on me, so I can see the keys, and so that there's kind of something like a focus. I tried doing that today, and the sun didn't go down fast enough. So yeah, so I had thought of it, but I never got to carry it out. So
because it seems our orchestra been experimenting, like from pure music to like almost like from pure music to background music, like something else is the focus, we have the background. So there are huge ranges, it seems.
So Wendy, I see that you kind of gave an answer. Can you expand on your thoughts a little bit?
Okay. So I personally think with a lot of our audience members, doesn't matter if they are professional musician or not, sometimes it's nice to have a PowerPoint or like a visual or just like something soothing in the background. It's not going to take away from the music, because as long as you're good enough, we shouldn't be worried that like we're taking away from the music. Instead, it's something to augment, like, or also to explain what's happening. So if, for example, with the piece that you just played and displayed for us, if you wanted them to think a certain way, like we see it from the chat that everyone's like, it's calming, it's under the moon, it's whatever. Like we got the general sense that it's calming, but there's a multiple interpretations of what's actually been happening, right? So especially with Chinese music, we have themes and stories behind every single piece that are displayed is not just like a, you know, like a nocturne, fantasia and all that stuff. We actually have specific stories. So if we want the audience to think a certain way, we can also help the experience along by actually display, say, for example, horses' feet running through the field when it's a running, like horse racing or something like that, right? So it's not going to take away from what you're playing, but it's actually going to help them so that we are all on the same page. So that's my 2 cents.
Anyone have an opposing view by any chance?
I think a little bit differently. Sometimes you put a PowerPoint, some kind of background, yeah, it helps to set up the mood, or at least to explain what the music is all about. Like, for example, in our concert, sometimes we have a big screen and do something move around. If it being done tastefully, it's good because people appreciate that. But if it's too busy, then it's distracting. See, the attention should be on the performer, not on the background. Like if you like a singer, if you try to sing, some people are dancing behind you, and that's a beautiful girl. People, those girls get all the attention, not you. Yes, sometimes it hide your thought too. Then sometimes you make a mistake, nobody notice, but they notice that the girl behind you. But in music, I think it's more important. Make sure that the audience are looking at you, not on the background. That's what I feel.
That's a good point to both of them. I think actually, I think in Taiwan they like to have someone read out the story before every single piece, like just a quick paragraph about the piece, and then they play the piece. I don't know if that's something that's helpful too. Well, or I guess we can mix it, PowerPoint and description, or just a description, or nothing. Like there are so many ways to do this. I guess there is no right or wrong. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think let's leave it without a conclusion.
Okay.
Why don't I share my second piece? Okay, so I think I'll save the Beethoven Sonata for last, simply because it's the longest one. So as I said again, this is the first C major Prelude and Fugue from the Well-Tempered Clavier, written by Bach, the elder, Johann Sebastian Bach. Perhaps his, I mean, for me, I found his most interesting fact the fact that he managed to have 20 children. But so in the well-tempered clavier, or well-temperament, is something that actually it's something that we should probably be thinking about more in an orchestra than we currently do. Basically, it used to be, for example, for example, erhu players, you'll know that if you play, say, an E, first finger E on your D string, it will be slightly different depending on what key you play in. Right? For example, if your E is a re in D major, it might be different from, say, if it's a la in G major, right? Or if it's a do in E major. That's how keyboards used to be made as well. The problem, of course, as the pluck string players will know, is that, well, you can't just change your frets around. Right? They're presumably glued tight to the instrument, and if they're not, then that's a problem. So, in other words, you can have an you can have a piece, or you can have your instrument tuned so that it sounds very nice in, say, D major. But then once you change it to a strange key like B major, then all your notes sound very out of tune. Obviously, that's not great. So somebody, I forget who it was, came up with this beautiful idea that if we make every note slightly mistuned, then it will be all equal. And this was revolutionary, because now you can have one keyboard that can play in every single key and it will sound equally slightly out of tune, but so slight that nobody really will notice. And so that's what we call well temperament or equal temperament. I think there's a slight difference between the two, but I don't remember exactly what the difference is. So somebody like Bach, he became really excited, and he wrote 24 pieces, one in every single major and minor key. And then he got so excited that he did it again 20 years later. These have become pretty much one of the standard pieces in a piano player's repertoire, to the extent that if you want your ARCT, you have to do at least one of those. And there are people who absolutely love Bach, and then there are people who like him a little less, to say the least. So that is something historical. I mean, I haven't said anything about the music yet, but this is stuff that you'll often hear, say, in program, or you'll see in program notes, or you'll hear in, say, an introduction. So why don't I play this piece now, and then let's kind of think about, was my introduction helpful, or did it not matter? Here we go. Oh, I'm going to do that. Let's share my piece. Let's share my screen. Share sound, optimize our video clip. Here we go. And here we go. Right, let's close that off. Yes, thank you, Amy. So the box by the way was the Zoom chat box, which I had large in my split screen. Yes. Okay. Yes. So there we go. I think it's fixed now. Yeah. Okay. So let's do a quick poll. I can't actually do the poll thing, but let's do a quick poll. Was the introduction, my spiel, did it enhance your experience of the piece? Did it detract from it? Did it really not matter? And or is there something else that you felt would have, like something else in my introduction that would have been more enhancing? Let's make a liberal use of this chat function once again, or just unmute yourself and start talking.
Okay, I would like to add a few things.
Mhm.
When you mentioned the introduction, okay, I expect, okay, this is different. The piano have a new sound. I also keep an eye on your finger too.
Mhm.
The melody or sound-wise, this piece is very simple. It's just arpeggio, not very complicated. No big complicated complex harmony. But that is the playing the harmony that will I would say demonstrate the well-tempered scale. For simple note for arpeggio, it doesn't demonstrate much.
Okay.
In fact, your left hand or right hand seldom play two notes. They are all single notes.
Okay. Good. Hold that thought. I think that it's a good point that you make. Others?
Sometimes I feel simple music are easier to follow. Like complex music seems to require educated, like a trained ear kind of thing. If I'm making sense, like the lay person will be more it's more challenging to appreciate higher level music sometimes, at least. Okay. And your introduction sort of make me look for things that I would not have looked for if there was no introduction. Like I will try to find things that you mentioned, like a treasure hunt kind of almost.
Okay, good. Hold that thought as well. Okay, so let's maybe talk about. I think Felix and Calvin, between the two of you, you actually raised a point that I hadn't considered. So again, I think this is part of the experience as well. You know, and when I think when Calvin, you brought up the idea of two-way communication. I think, you know, imagine a concert experience where we get this kind of two-way communication. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So Calvin Lee said, yeah, it's an 18th century piece, and should it be performed with a harpsichord? Oh, this is great. Hold that thought as well. Okay, quick question to everybody. Was this piece simpler, or was the previous piece simpler? Maybe like show a reaction if this piece was simpler, and don't do anything if the other one was simpler. Okay, previous piece.
It seems more simple.
Okay.
But simple pieces are harder to play, I think. I don't know.
Okay. So Tracy says this one is simpler. Okay, good. It depends on I think which part of the piece you're thinking of. So I think one thing that I didn't mention in my introduction is that when Bach wrote these preludes and fugues, he always wrote them as a pair. So that each key has one prelude and one fugue. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the term fugue, although you've all played a fugue. or at least those of you who were in TCO about 4.5 years ago have all played a fugue in the sketches from the last movement from the sketches of Northern Nationalities. So I'm going to show you my analysis of this piece. Okay, so I'm going to. Okay, here we go. Everyone see the sheet music in front of them? Yes, hopefully. Everyone see something?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Let's move this over here. So everything that is highlighted, and then there's somewhere I've used a yellow highlighter, which doesn't show up quite so well, at least not on my screen, is a melody. So the prelude, and most of the preludes tend to be fairly simple. You know, this one here. Oops. Let me unplug. Right, they're just straightforward chords, as Calvin said, that are broken up. Right. That's really what it is. And maybe this has something to do with the purpose of the prelude, which is to set up the fugue. As you can see from the fugue, the melody jumps around in different spots. Right, it starts in the alto, which I've shown with the pink, jumps up to the soprano, which I show in the green. So when that happens, the alto has to play softer, and then it jumps down to the tenor, which is in blue, and then finally the bass, which is in yellow. And you'll notice that afterwards, there are overlaps, or the technical term is stretto. So here we have the soprano and the tenor playing overlapped, and then same thing with the bass and the alto, and so on and so forth. So this is actually one. So fugues by nature are actually quite complex creatures, despite, I think, their simple sound. And this is among fugues, among the well-tempered clavier fugues, one of the most complex ones, simply because, as you can see from the colors, there's a melody all the time. There are other fugues, which I didn't go through the whole coloring process, where there are parts where there is no melody, and we kind of think of those as breaks. This is also another reason why certain people, me included, don't like Bach a whole lot, because it's insanely difficult to play, but it sounds very simple. But okay, let's see. Let's go back to Calvin Lee's point. So as he said, it's an 18th century piece. Yeah, see, Wendy, there are people who like Bach. Patty is another one of those, and then there are people who don't. So okay, so Calvin Lee says it's an 18th century piece. Should it be performed on the harpsichord? Well, again, I think this is a point where there's no real there's no real answer. I think the operative word is should in your statement. And you know, I think we have, you know, you probably have questions about this as well when it comes to performing, say, Chinese music. Just because something is written in a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that we have to perform it in that way, or are there other ways of performing it? You know, the piece that comes to mind, for example, is the Beijing opera tunes that we did in, I guess it was my second year here, where it was originally written, right, for a fairly large Chinese orchestra, but we ended up doing it with a small chamber group. Well, you know, is that allowed? Well, we already did it, so shoot me. Is there are there things that can be revealed by doing it differently? Maybe. And will that be a positive experience to people, to an audience, or maybe a negative experience? Well, again, it depends. People who perhaps have always heard it in a certain way might be really put off by a different method of playing, while to people who haven't heard or haven't had an experience with the piece before might not even notice. So. Okay, I'm looking at the time. I could probably go on for another 3 hours, but I feel like some of you actually like sleeping. So why don't I play my last piece again? So this one's in 3 movements or 2.5 movements. I don't know. Maybe I'll give an introduction to it, and then I'll just go ahead and play. So this is the Opus 109 Sonata by Beethoven, which is the 3rd last sonata that he wrote. Beethoven, as you probably know, went deaf he had gone deaf about 20 odd years back, which is something that really affected him. I mean, his whole thing was, if I'm a musician and I'm deaf, well, can I still be a musician? Maybe I should just take my own life and not bother with this. But then he reaches the conclusion, for the sake of music, I will hang on. I bring this up because I think a lot of our modern listening sensibilities have been conditioned by that, by Beethoven. Whether we talk about Chinese, Western, African, Pacific Islander music, I think our modern ways of listening have been conditioned by what Beethoven did. Kelvin Chan, what you said at the beginning about people listening to a concert is a very Beethoven thing. Before Beethoven, if I'm playing, you drink your tea or whatever, you talk to your friends. That was normal. And so this is one effect that Beethoven had, and the reason why I mentioned that it is his 3rd last piano sonata is because by this time he started writing some very abstract music, and scholars have called this very like tiny utterances, almost like he's speaking very quick, small sentences and just stringing these seemingly unconnected sentences together, which actually makes his late works quite difficult to understand. So for reference, Beethoven died about five years after writing this piece. So why don't I play this piece, and then we'll see where that leads us, and if nowhere, then we'll call it a night. All right, here we go. Everyone see the video now? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. this is the piece where that I mentioned where I played literally up to where I learned. Two reasons for that. Two reasons for that. One is so I would have more incentive to learn it, and second is a question I had been thinking of is, you don't need to hear me play this piece. You can go online and hear pianist 100 times better than me play this piece, and it will sound 100 times better. And then the same goes for any piece we perform. Taipei Chinese Orchestra plays much better than Toronto Chinese Orchestra, and Berlin Philharmonic plays much better than the North York Philharmonic, North York Concert Orchestra. Sorry. So one of my thoughts anyway, and is what are things that we can share, and then maybe works in progress is something that we can share that Berlin is not going to share. Anyway, so that's the music I have. Calvin and Amy, you raise a good point. I don't know. By the way, the music is available for free online. So if you have time on your hands, you can definitely take it and arrange it for a string ensemble and get somebody to try it for you.
Matthew.
Yeah.
Since the piano is a well-tempered piano, all the notes are different. So all the harmony, quote unquote, are all wrong.
Right.
So if you are a string ensemble play it, the harmony will be right. So it may sound completely different.
Possible. Possible. And it may also depend on the sophistication of the audience as well. By the way, since you mentioned wrong versus right tuning, I'm not sure if anybody noticed that my high B is out of tune. It's a bit flat, but COVID. Yeah, so I don't know in terms of that.
That's a good point, actually, Matthew. Sometimes I feel it's like perfect tuning is somewhat of a Western concept. Some Chinese pieces, we are like traditionally, at least we don't purposely play so structurally. Like 4/4 time, perfect pitch. It's not what it is about. Like for Ran, a piece is Zhao Pong. Drumkaya is on purpose, it's slightly off. Like it's almost counter. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I feel sometimes the structure thing is so very Western.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And keep in mind too, as I was saying about this Beethoven late style, his music is actually compared to the unstructured, which is one big reason why I wanted to share this piece. Let me see if I can pull it up actually, because when I was looking at this piece, it's stuff that comes up. I wouldn't say super often, but it does come up in orchestra music. Take a look at, for example, the first page of this piece here. Let's actually take that away. I have some annotations here, but that's not so important. The important part is, we start off with very regular beats. It's just 1 or 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and then smack we get this passage which is very free. And the question is, well, what do we do with that? It's a question that Felix, I'm sure you've encountered when you're playing your pieces, and several, those of you who play solo pieces, but again, even in orchestra pieces, what do we do with sections like this? How do we shape them?
Follow the conductor.
Yeah. What if you don't have a conductor? Like, this is a piano solo piece. So I'll come back to that point at the very end, but I'm curious if anybody has parting thoughts.
It seems to be a better experience listening to longer pieces if you play music before, I think. I feel anyway, at least for me, because short pieces, if you play music yourself, it's kind of not a full story, sort of. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I would rather have a concert with 3 large pieces than with 30 small pieces. But you know, that's me.
Risky for the audience, though. No.
Yeah. You know, singers will often feel differently because you know their songs are often right. Yeah. Okay. So my parting thought actually comes back to this idea of experiential night. I think one of the questions, I forget whether I actually asked it or not, is who is doing the experiencing and all of that, and what are we experiencing? I think you all have mentioned stuff that you experience, and it's a very receptive experience. You know, you're here to learn something. You're here to be enriched, and so on. I found this experience extremely experiential for me, in the sense that for the first time in about 8 years, I experienced blood, sweat, and tears from just practicing this much. And again, it was fun. Like having a little bit of pressure, but not all that much. You know, I don't have a teacher who will yell at me if I didn't practice enough. But having a little bit of pressure was actually kind of fun. So there's that. And also it made me realize just how just how far there is to go in terms of music. It came out the most in the Beethoven that I just played, in the sense of there's huge sections where I have no idea what to do with. And you know, I would listen to recordings. There are actually master classes of this piece online, which I listen to, and you know, you try following those, and then you record and you listen to yourself play, and you're like, it doesn't evoke the same oomph that, say, if I were to listen to a professional pianist play this. You know, and it's the same with the other 2 pieces as well. So you know, that's my experience with this. It opened my eyes up to, I think, a much greater range of what is possible for a performance, and just how high the bar is. I think, you know, Felix, at the very beginning, you mentioned sometimes it's the effect of something, or it's the feeling. And with these pieces, I actually found that the most difficult part to get. You know, like playing notes, I could drill these, and you know, when I can't sleep, you wake up at 2 a.m., you drill for a couple hours, and you're sleepy again. You know, that's actually the easy part. Some of you can't do that with your instruments, but you know. But it was thinking through the piece and asking yourself, how am I going to make this piece special so that people aren't bored out of their minds? And you know, I don't have answers to that. If I did, well, I would be playing in Carnegie Hall or something. All right, good. Okay, so that's all I have. Thank you for listening. Thank you for typing into the chat. Thank you for speaking, some of you, and yeah.
Thank you to you too. Thank you very much, Matthew, for preparing, and that's very thought-provoking.